What I want you to do at this point is go back to your reading, and if you have a printout or if you have it electronically in front of you, you'll notice page 29. And if you look on page 29, there's a green box again, a little bit below the midway point on the page, and it's entitled "The Pattern of God's Saving Actions." And I want you to notice that you have creation, the flood, and the Exodus. They are put side by side here in this particular box. And you can see how the different words used for these are paralleled to each other. There's no question that the Exodus is modeled on the creation and the flood, and that there are patterns there. If you will go to that with me, take a look at your in your reading. You'll see the three side by side in that green box. And you'll notice right at the beginning that creation and flood both begin with chaos. In both instances, the waters completely cover the earth. The entire earth is underwater. That was the condition before creation. It's the condition in the middle of the flood story as well. But you will notice that under Exodus, it talks about spiritual chaos. In the one hand, the Red Sea is the chaos, but it's a much more limited. It's similar in experience to the flood story and the creation, but it's on a much smaller scale. In a real sense, the chaos of this story is slavery. It's the people of God being under the subjection of someone other than God. Someone else has dominion over his people when God should have been the one. So there is, you could say, a spiritualizing of the type. In the Exodus story and in the stories that follow, the pattern of creation is still followed. But often it is on a more spiritual level. In other words, rather than some literal thing, water is actually covering the earth, dry land appearing, the language is still there, but the spiritual reference becomes stronger. In the Exodus story, there's waters covering the ground. There's a dividing of the waters. There's dry land appearing. There's a passing through the waters as Israel walks through, etc. So there are patterns in the language that is used there. But now the purpose of the story is not just a physical rescue, but also a spiritual rescue. God is rescuing the people from Egypt to bring them to himself. God is removing them from their king, the Pharaoh, and he is bringing them to himself as their new king, as the head of a theocracy, if you want to call it that. So we see in this pattern that the Exodus clearly builds on creation and the flood. It doesn't pick up on every detail, but it definitely is using the earlier language for a purpose. And as we studied exegesis, I think you'll remember that exegesis focuses on the language of the biblical writer. What was the writer trying to say? And that language out of necessity is the language of the past. And because it's the language of the past, it is necessary that human beings understand that past in order to understand what God is saying here. In the Pentateuch, of course, the language is all part of the same narrative, and you can see how the language is related between those three. What do we learn from this recurring pattern? There are a number of things that are there to learn, and I want to show you an illustration that